Hi, it's Paul Guppy with the Washington Policy Center, and this is our regular update on issues that are happening around the state that affect all of our lives. In this particular episode, what I want to cover is basically reaction to some announcements that have been made by a couple of our top elected officials in the state, and that's part of our work here. Is we believe in holding public officials accountable. They themselves often say, hey, hold us accountable. That's a popular thing for politicians to say. When we find is that when we do that, then they complain. So I'll give the reaction to what these two officials have announced, and then we'll see what the follow-up is. In the meantime, I want to encourage everyone to please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really helps build our audience and gives us much greater impact across the state and provides that independent viewpoint that we think is so important for the people of Washington state. So off we go. The two officials I'm referring to are Superintendent Reykdal, who won't be surprised that we're criticizing something he does. He does missteps all the time. And the second one is a leader in the Democratic Senate, in the legislature, in the Senate. And I'll get to that in a second. But what Superintendent Reykdal did is, well, I'll give the background. There is a member of his staff, an employee at the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and this person is also separately an elected member of the Tumwater School Board. And most school board members are part-time, they're volunteers. We want people to participate in their communities, and that's what this woman had done. On February 27th, there was a school board meeting at which the board passed a resolution regarding athletic policies in the school, and that is to prevent boys from participating in girls' sports. That resolution passed, and shortly after that, Superintendent Reykdal fired this woman from her job. On June 3rd, she filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against Superintendent Reykdal. The problem we see here is just because her employer happens to be a government agency and elected a public official took personal job termination action against her because of an official vote that she had made as a volunteer member of the school board, acting on behalf of parents and her constituents. Those two worlds should be completely separate, and that's the policy problem that we see, mixing the governance of a local school board up with statewide politics as to what this powerful government official does. The second problem is the controversy. By opening himself to a wrongful termination lawsuit, Superintendent Reykdal is once again embroiling the schools in controversy, pulling the public school system away from its core mission of providing academics and learning for children, and just mixing up into politics and again, punishing this school board member for the vote that she made. By the way, other school board members voted the same way that she did. They didn't lose their jobs. She was the only one who was targeted. So we think that this is, again, a waste of resources. But the other problem is the way it undermines public confidence in the schools. And the public school system is losing students. Families are more interested in alternatives and choices. And the last thing that top leaders need to do is to get embroiled in these kinds of controversies. We think it's a mistake. It also pulls money and resources away from supporting the schools. This was covered broadly by Brandy Cruz on Undivided. I wanted to give her credit because she often provides some good reporting on things that often go unnoticed in what is happening in our state. The next issue is our intrepid researcher, Mark Harmsworth, who looks into business climate issues, is responding to a report that just came out from Senator Jamie Pedersen, right here. And Senator Pedersen is touting a couple of reports that he's identifying that say that Washington state has a great business climate, like one of the best in the country. And that's just simply not the case. So what Mark did was go to the source, dig into the numbers, and look at what these two reports are claiming. Well, first off, he's noticed that one of the reports comes from an international socialist activist organization, Oxfam, which touts itself as an international charity. Fine. They also support a 25% global tax on everyone. So that puts their principles in question right there as to, what do they know about running a business? And the other thing that Oxfam does is they take mandated payroll taxes, public policies that have been imposed on business owners across the country, and they tout those as being a benefit. Well, the problem with that is that those policies and decisions are not voluntary. They're not negotiated between workers and employers. They don't reflect the actual job market in any particular area. They are just slathered on as a mandate, top down by powerful state officials like Senator Pedersen. So we don't think that counts as improving the business climate. It actually makes it more expensive to do work to run a business and work in Washington state. And the second report that Mark looked into was CNBC did a report on business friendliness in the state. And when you dig into the numbers, they actually show Washington as being 42nd out of 50 in overall business friendliness. A small fact that Senator Pedersen chose not to mention. And Mark went further and looked into why. And the answer is because of accumulated policies over the years, but particularly in this last legislative session, earlier in 2025, the lawmakers passed a series of policies that make it much more expensive to do business in Washington state. To cite one example, which has been controversial, SB 5041, for the first time ever, taps a state trust fund, takes payroll taxes that people pay into the unemployment insurance program and diverts that to pay to unions that go on strike. So now there's a state fund that pays unions to go on strike. It comes from payroll taxes that workers have to pay. And that doesn't add to the business climate. It undermines confidence in the unemployment insurance system and diverts money from what workers really should be paying for. Also, Mark did a quick count of, just off the top of his head, basically, because he's such an expert, of at least 9 taxes that make business more expensive. The B&O tax, the sales tax, license fees, property tax, fuel tax, vehicle fees, RTA transportation taxes, recording fees, estate taxes on family businesses. And that's only a partial list of what Washington state is imposing on the business climate in our state. Mark also assesses that the tax burden has almost doubled in the last 8 years. And we think this adds up to stories that we constantly hear of business owners who are leaving the state. They don't make big announcements about it. Why would they? They don't want any negative attention. But gradually, entrepreneurs, investors, and business creators we see are slowly leaving the state. And of course, top leaders in our state want to deny that that's happening and even put out information that they claim is the opposite. So we want to get the facts out there. With that, I'll wrap up on issues and just mention a couple of important events that are coming up for Washington Policy Center. We are excited because on July 12th, we are holding the South Sound Salmon Bake at Wilcox Farms in Roy, Washington. And you can get ticket information on our website. That summertime picnic is going to be a lot of fun with our supporters and members. Also, coming up on July 8th, on Tuesday at noon, we're doing a Zoom online event with the WPC On The Go program that we do every week. But this time we have national school reform expert Corey DeAngelis is going to be our guest. We'll also have Vicki Murray, who is our own education expert, and they will be talking about the exciting movement towards school choice that is happening across the country. The great thing about having Corey DeAngelis is he has been a leading edge expert on school reform and change in a range of states across the country. He knows more about it than anyone else, and he'll be able to give us an update on the exciting things that are happening in other states, and then what lessons Washington policymakers can learn in order to improve education here. So with that, I will wrap up and wish everyone a happy 4th of July coming up next week and celebrating our freedoms. And of course, at Washington Policy Center, what we want to celebrate is the freedom to think for yourself, to form your own opinions, access your own information, and most importantly, freedom of speech, express your own thoughts without fear or censorship. And those are principles that we will continue to stand up for. And we're glad that the 4th of July allows us to celebrate that as a country. And with that, I'll wrap up and I'll see you next time. Thanks.
If you found this informative, share it with a friend and consider checking out one of our suggested videos over here. Make sure you're subscribed so that you can stay up to date with the latest policy news from Washington.